I want to start by saying this clearly because I need to hear myself say it. I'm not here because I have answers. I'm here because something finally has a name, and I'm standing inside that realization without knowing how this ends. A few weeks ago, I was spiraling and I was angry. I was angry at myself for not following through on something that felt just within reach, but that I couldn't quite grasp, or maybe kept preventing myself from reaching. This wasn't the first time I'd berated myself for my shortcomings or felt desperate for help. So I turned to research. There had to be a reason I couldn't get off this maddening mental roller coaster. Desperate for an explanation, I went looking for answers to my deepening depression and the ADHD I've lived with for most of my life. I came across a definition from the National Institutes of Health for ADHD-related demoralization. My body went slack. I exhaled like it was my last breath. It described a state of hopelessness and discouragement that develops after years, sometimes decades, of effort not matching outcomes, of chronic academic, social, and occupational failures, of emotional dysregulation, of feeling like no matter what you do, nothing really works. I remember thinking, that's it. That's the thing that's held me captive for decades. Although I've never expressed it out loud, it feels insurmountable, like a glass wall that reaches high into the heavens and spans the entire globe. I can't break through it. I don't have the tools. I can see the other side perfectly. I know what's there. I know that's where I want to be. It's all I've ever wanted to reach. And yet, I simply can't get there. I start things easily. That part has never been the problem. I can see possibilities quickly. I can envision outcomes. I can feel momentum from the start. For a brief window, I can even believe maybe this time. But underneath all of it is a much quieter, heavier truth. I don't trust myself. I don't believe I'm smart enough to sustain anything. I don't believe I'm talented enough for it to matter. And I don't believe I'm worthwhile enough for anyone to care if I follow through. So when the energy slows, as it always does, the doubt takes over. Not loud doubt, convincing doubt, the kind that feels factual. The effort and the outcome stop lining up. And instead of pushing through, something in me shuts down. Not because I don't try, but because continuing feels like setting myself up to be exposed. Eventually, I quit, not out of laziness or lack of discipline. I quit because every ending feels pre written, and I'm exhausted from proving it to myself over and over. I grew up with ADHD in a time when it wasn't understood, wasn't even widely known outside of mental health circles, and there certainly weren't many of those in my hometown. Even if there had been, female brains weren't included in ADHD research until I was already in college, already an adult. So there must be a lot of us, a lot of women who have white knuckled through life, through academics, through careers, through relationships, through parenting, all of it. We learned how to cope without ever understanding what we were coping with. And no one really talks about how debilitating that is, especially for adult women who are diagnosed later in life, sometimes only because their child was diagnosed first. That's what happened to me. As my daughter was being assessed, I kept thinking, that all sounds very familiar. And at the same time, inwardly shouting, You absolutely do not have this. The stigma and shame around mental health have only recently begun to lift. And even now, it's hard to shake the feeling that at any moment it could revert to a time when you were told to get it together or stop feeling sorry for yourself. And that's exactly how it feels. Because by any rational measure, it seems ridiculous to feel stuck behind a glass wall when my physical health and outward life appear perfectly fine. So I've gotten very, very good at masking what's really going on in my mind. I've manufactured every conceivable version of myself, except one that I can actually understand. That's why I'm finally telling my story. I want to find out who I really am and what I'm capable of being without this boundary between my mind and the rest of me. ADHD related demoralization, especially over the last decade, has taken a real toll on my confidence, my self worth, my willingness to voice opinions or share insights about my own life. Because no matter how focused I am, how good my intentions are, or how much effort I put in, something stops me cold. For years, I thought I was simply depressed. I remember how low I felt in college, away from home, suddenly independent in ways I didn't know how to navigate. The seemingly endless number of mistakes I could make with one bad decision left me living in a state of paralysis for long stretches of time. I only survived academically because I chose a creative field, something that worked with my brain. But even then, when I graduated, I had no idea what came next. Just getting through higher education had taken everything I had. Starting my career wasn't much easier, but at least there were fewer decisions. I could focus on doing what I knew how to do and using my creative talents. Until the day I inevitably got bored, that is. And that pattern followed me. I'd enter a job, assess the issues, fix problems, organize the chaos, improve things, and leave. One after another. I couldn't understand why the idea of staying in a position for more than a few years felt impossible. Now I do. Seeing the word demoralization shifted something inside me. Because if that term existed, then I didn't have to feel crazy or scattered or broken. Like many neurodivergents, I had always sensed I was different. But this reframed everything. It explained why therapy and medication helped, but never reached the core. Why sadness seeped into everything. Why shame lingered and compounded as the years passed. For a long time, I've thought of myself as the opposite of a blooming flower, pulling inward, cocooning, hiding, because the failures felt so large and so final. But I don't want to live like that anymore. I don't want to be sad forever. I don't want to waste the life I do have. And now that I know, I don't want other people like me thinking they're broken when there's an explanation. This podcast isn't about fixing anything yet. It's about telling the truth out loud about what ADHD related demoralization has been like for me. I don't know where this goes. I don't know what changes yet, but I'm ready to stay present long enough to find out. If you're listening and this sounds familiar, the best advice I can offer you right now is to just recognize that this weight you've been carrying isn't imaginary and you aren't alone. Take solace in knowing I'm walking down the same path as you, and doing my best to understand the past without blame anymore. I'll be back next time, still in this process, still telling the truth as it shows up. Until then, give yourself grace. You've been listening to Demoralized with Molly Kellogg-Schmauch.